Okay, 6 o'clock. We'll get started. This evening is always, I think, a really good one for lots of reasons. For students, you get to hear from our alums. They get to tell you how great life is and how much better it is after E&TIM. No, but you get to do that. But it's good for them too. It's good for them to come back and spend a little bit of time at Carnegie Mellon, and it's good for me to see them and get a chance to see what they've done, how things have changed, and they're all successful to a good extent. So good to have them. Just so for the females in the audience, I did invite 3 other females. Maddie showed up. The other 3 just had bad luck, last minute changes. So Maddie's going to have to represent all of the females for us tonight. So what I thought I'd do is I'll let them do self-introductions. They'll tell you whatever they want to tell you, and then we'll get into the questions. So what we've done is I've given them the questions that you guys have written for them, unedited, and so they'll answer some of those. I'll ask them some of the general questions that you guys provided. Then they'll come back and answer some of the questions. Then we'll give you a chance, upon reflection, to ask other questions if you have reflections. If not, they'll just follow through on some of the other questions that we have for tonight. Okay? Great.
Okay, yeah.
You need to grab a mic?
Okay. Take it off.
Yeah.
There we go. Hello, everyone. So I'm Fritjof Melle. So I am a E&TIM alumni from 2015. I did E&TIM and a dual degree with ECE. And after I graduated from E&TIM, I went and joined PwC in San Francisco. And I've since transitioned to PwC Strategy, and I work in private equity consulting.
I'm Jonathan Tanner. I was civil engineering undergrad and doubled in engineering public policy before joining E&TIM. I worked at Northrop Grumman for 2.5 years in LA, as I think most of y'all know based on the questions that I got. And I'm now working in DC for A.T. Kearney. And I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. That's important too.
I'm Maddie Joffrey. I did my undergrad in civil engineering as well here at CMU. And then I did a dual master's in environmental engineering and E&TIM. So I graduated in 2016 with these 2. Then after that, I went on to Northrop Grumman in Baltimore, and I was in a rotational program, the professional development program. I worked as a systems engineer, a field engineer, and then I landed in hardware engineering, and I'm working as an RF design engineer right now.
Hey guys, my name is Akash Patak. I graduated from E&TIM in 2016. Before E&TIM, I worked in the industry in engineering and product management role for over 6 years. After E&TIM, I've been a product manager. Currently, I work with a startup called Clean Robotics, and I work as the VP of product commercialization. My day-to-day include product management and go-to-market. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Hi, folks. I'm Travis Miller. I did my undergraduate degree in applied physics at Grove City College, which is about an hour north of here. Worked for about 4.5 years at a company called 26 Incorporated as an optical design engineer, and then started E&TIM part-time, ended up coming and doing E&TIM full-time. Graduated in 2016 with Akash, and then ended up going back to the same company, 26. I've been there for about 1.5 years as the EUV product line manager. So I'm responsible for all of our products that we sell into what we call the EUV industry. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so we'll get started, and I'll just start with some of the general questions. So the first question is, would you please tell us one of the most unforgettable experiences while you were studying in the E&TIM program?
I can take that, yeah. Yeah, so this is, it's interesting. When I think back at E&TIM now, the first thing that comes to mind is really the first semester when we're doing the strategy cases. because a couple of things came together. It was also the strategy class, the way it kind of came through. It's like you start forming these teams beginning, and then halfway through you kind of form your own teams. And we ended up spending a lot of hours working together on some of these cases. And at some point, we actually decided well, we wanted to really take everything we learned and try to really make a really good achievement. So I was actually teaming up with Jonathan, sitting next to me here, and some others. And I think just we were able to really take everything we learned and get a good grade together by working all-nighters and having a good time together solving the case. So, yeah.
Anybody else want to address that question?
I can add on.
Sure.
Do we need the mic? Is it
Yes.
there for the video?
Yes. It's for the video.
Yeah, I think the most unforgettable experience for me during E&TIM was on day one, or in the orientation. So you arrived, so I arrived with a very corporate mindset after working 6 years, and I was told, like, I thought it would be all like rosy, like, oh, welcome to CMU, this is gonna be nice, but I was told day one, hey, you should start looking for internships. Some people have already secured internships, and you're probably late. I was like, okay. But that played out very well. I got a very good internship.
Good. Anybody else? All right, next question. Why did you choose the E&TIM program? What did you find most attractive about the program? Who wants to take that one?
I'll take that one. So I was in my undergrad before I decided to join E&TIM. I was in my senior year. I knew I was going to stay for my master's in environmental engineering, and then somehow, a fluke, I found E&TIM, and I was like, wow, this program is exactly what I'm looking for. I want the business side. I want to learn more about innovation and how to manage it and all of that. But I also still want to stay technical. So I really liked how E&TIM allowed me to do that. So.
Anybody else?
Yeah, and to follow up on that, so I was doing civil engineering, actually same class as Maddie for undergrad too, and came to the conclusion that engineering wasn't what I wanted to do long term, specifically civil engineering. And went around, spoke to some people within the EPP department, and I told them I was essentially applying to these one-year programs at Duke and Wake Forest that was a business program for non-business people undergrad. And they were like, well, we have something here at CMU that's supposed to be a very, very strong program. So I started looking into it and landed on what was E&TIM.
Very good. All right, next question. What skill sets / aspects of the E&TIM curriculum did you find most valuable in your current position? And secondly, are there classes you wish you had taken? Who wants to take that one? All right, Travis.
So I think for me, one of the things that I find still to be most valuable is the R&D management class, not just because Jimmy taught that. He has no grade on me, so I don't have to suck up to him anymore. But really just kind of the mindset of what it means to manage innovation. What does that look like in a company? How do you take a product from a concept to through to development, and what does that mean to balance your portfolio? In the role that I'm in now, I get to see a little bit more from a company perspective, and just having that mindset to be able to look at, okay, where do we have gaps? Where do some of these products fit in our portfolio? So I guess it's probably too late to sign up for that now, but if you get to sign up for that, you should. And then I think for me, one thing that I took the class, but I'm still trying to develop a better understanding is just the finance side of things. So I came in with a technical undergrad, and just understanding the really the finance background of how a business operates. I think if you want to be in management, and I don't know if anybody else has experienced this, but I know for us, like, you have to be able to speak in the finance and the numbers and gross margins and profit and all of that. So yeah, I would encourage you to get that background.
Good. Anybody else?
One thing that one thing that's been that I've used very frequently is the framework. So now I have context around things. I think in buckets that I can structure very well and communicate to others very efficiently without using extra words that are needed or wasting others' time. That's something that we preached here. Process-driven framework, structures, things like that.
Very good. Next question. What is one word of advice you would give to the 2017-18 graduating E&TIM class?
One word.
Yeah, that's the question. Yes.
Patience.
We'll get one from everybody. Okay.
I think work hard. Yeah, that's why I asked.
He always had it when he was in class, too.
Yeah, I would add persistence with classes and the jobs that you're seeking. It's a process. Go for it.
This is not one word, but
Okay.
don't be afraid.
Good. Did you give yours, Travis, or are you still contemplating?
I'm still contemplating.
It's really hard.
That's it, why you take time before making decisions.
Travis was deliberate when he's in the program, too. So.
Should that be my word? No, I would say, yeah, I don't know. I'll think of one.
All right, so we'll go to this one question, this other question, and then we'll come back. So next question, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Do you expect to use concepts from the E&TIM program? The second question you don't have to address, we know the answer. The first question, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years?
I can take a stab at that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently doing private equity consulting and enjoying that quite a lot. I think E&TIM as a foundation and the work experience I've had in the past couple of years, I really see a very good path into going out of consulting into driving a startup myself. So, in about 5 years' time, I hope to join fellow entrepreneurs both here and hopefully in the room. So that's my path.
Anybody else want to take that one?
I hate this question, just throwing that out there. The age-old question, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one knows. No one ever knows. In 5 years, though, I want to be happy, and I want to be in a position where I'm challenged and where I'm growing. So whether that's still technical, in a very technical role, I'll be happy there, or if it's in a management role, I'll be happy there as well. So I'm still deciding.
Okay. Good answer to a question you didn't like.
I think I'll just piggyback on that because, so like I said, I worked for a while. I came to E&TIM. I was really, hoping to come out of E&TIM with a specific direction, and I think it definitely gave me guidance. But I agree. I think your career path can change, and it's all right to not have everything figured out. I mean, if you know what you want to do, then go after that. But it's also okay to find something and see how that takes you along your career.
What's great is that E&TIM gives you the skills to really do whatever you want. You know, you can make your own career path and figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm along the same lines in terms of not liking this question, and it's not so much of where I want to be in 5 years, but what I would have liked to accomplish over the next 5 years. So working in another country is something that I've always wanted to do. Leading a work stream that I was initially uncomfortable with, but now I have the skill set to coach other people on how to take on new projects and new roles. So where specifically, I mean, the easy answer is happy and rich. But in terms of from a career standpoint, I don't know if it's with the same company or if I'm with another company in a completely different role that is more technical or something that's all business and there's no engineering aspect at all. I don't really know.
Okay.
I like that. I don't really know.
That is actually a very interesting question because when you put thought into it, I think I should go more towards how Maddie answered that question. Like you definitely want to be doing something that makes you happy, but then again, happy is subjective. So I do think in 5 years I want to be able to be creating value for other people. I do like to work on hard problems, which I'm doing right now with the current company, and hopefully if that exits or something, probably I'm, I've founded another company and I'm trying to solve some major problem in the world.
Okay, a little bit of a difficult one, or a different kind of question. If there was one thing that you could change about the E&TIM program, what would it be?
I'll take a stab. I think it's harder, but one thing that grew a lot with me in E&TIM was, the whole, like you mentioned earlier, the chase for the internship, which is kind of the key piece of it in the middle part, when you get experience, take that back, and you try to understand what you experienced and how that's going to take you to the next step. If I could change one thing, maybe it would be more facilitation of that process, because it was really difficult. It was tough to find a good job and in a short time frame, figure out also what you want to do with what you've now been given in terms of opportunities and classes and new knowledge.
Good. Anybody else?
I don't know how practical this is. I think one of the challenges, especially for the single degree students, is you basically have one shot at it. I mean, you have the spring semester, the fall semester, and then you're done. And so I think in some ways I was a little bit jealous of the dual degree students. I don't know how many of you are dual degree students, but you have a little bit more time to plan out, and if you miss a class, you can maybe catch it the next spring or the next fall. It was nice to have it done in a year, but for certain things it was almost like it went too fast. So I don't know how you change that. I guess that's your job. But yeah.
Very good. All right, so we'll switch gears, and so we'll start with what you guys have provided very specific questions for them, so they have the list, and we'll just let them just pick a question and have a discussion.
Yeah, I can start on my side here. One question that that took, this is one of the top questions, so I just kind of want to cover that, is like many of the other alumni here, I made like sort of a switch after I exited E&TIM. So I started off doing consulting, tech consulting in the Bay Area, working with cool tech companies there, and building on my background as an engineer and technical background. And then over time, I have switched into private equity consulting, where there's a lot less engineers, and doing that in New York. It's a very different environment. So I think the question was specifically, what made you transit from working with technology strategy to my current role? And I think, as for me, when I came in and started working actively and started exploring sort of what that really was in real life to work in consulting and working with these companies, I realized kind of what I like doing, what I don't like doing, and one of those things was working with smaller companies who are in a transformation, basically, to potentially become something much bigger. And the key point of that is really when you have like a sort of an acquisition and private equity get involved. And I was exposed to a lot of those transactions, and just doing that full time has just been incredibly rewarding, to be honest, because you get to see what brings company to the stage where they get that opportunity. You get to understand how they're evaluated, how they're valued, and how they're devalued, and just understanding that and seeing that in so many different contexts. Just it's been incredible to see in terms of trends, in terms of what it takes,
are the people that is able to drive these companies to that point. And yeah, it's been given enough that I've had the opportunity to continue doing that, and I love doing it full time. So yeah.
Questions on that?
So the one I'll tackle first is, how does A.T. Kearney fit in your career objectives? What do you aim to get out of this role, and what do you expect to do next? So I'll go ahead and nix the third one because I don't know what I'm doing next, as I said already. But okay, so how does A.T. Kearney fit in my career objectives? Maddie knows this, actually Jimmy, pretty much everybody knows this. At some point I want to start my own company. And with that, I figured one of the best ways to start a company and have the least amount of risk is for me to get as much exposure and experience as possible. And that's essentially why I decided to go the consulting route. Furthermore, in the future, I'm looking more at consulting startups from eventually developing countries is the goal. But it would start most likely with a smaller company in the US from a lower income area, or someone who doesn't have a lot of experience that needs that consulting help. So the way this fits in is I essentially am gaining that knowledge prior to, and hopefully can pay it forward by giving someone the experience that I've gained through consulting. And feel free to ask questions at any point.
All right, so
There's a question from Denise.
So you said developing countries, do you know where specifically you're looking?
Yeah, so actually me and another guy from E&TIM have spoken about this at length. South America is definitely somewhere. Colombia is a place that I visited and saw a lot of opportunity for disruption. I also traveled to Ghana with fellow E&TIM, or not E&TIM, fellow CMU alum, and that was also eye-opening. So just those experiences seeing developing countries, but that also have a lot of money being invested into the technical area or technologies area, but they're not getting the bang for their buck as we see here. Those are the two countries that I've looked at. So from a broader standpoint, Africa and South America.
all right, so one of the questions here is, how did E&TIM prepare you for such a significant career switch at Northrop Grumman? And how have the leadership roles you've had and your volunteer efforts translated to your career at Northrop Grumman? So I'll start with that first one. When I started E&TIM, I was already kind of out of my comfort zone because, I'd come from a technical background in civil engineering, and I was learning about business and how to manage innovation and everything. So just that in itself has helped prepare me for such a huge career shift from civil engineering to RF engineering. I'm constantly looking to learn and constantly looking for a challenge. And I think that also stems from E&TIM. There were so many different classes that we could take here, and I really took the opportunity to take as many as I could, and many that were very different. So that mindset of trying whatever you can, while you can, learning as much as you can, and going as hard as you can, has really helped me in my career at Northrop Grumman. Then the volunteer experiences. So when I was here at CMU, I was very involved with Engineers Without Borders. We started a project in Zimbabwe, and we had a project in Ecuador. And I think volunteering in those countries that have very, very different conditions than I'm used to working in the U.S. It makes you think on your feet. You have to learn to adapt and be really, really flexible. And when you work with the government, you have to be pretty flexible too. Things move very slowly, so you just have to kind of roll with it.
Yeah, so this is the first question on the list, but I think this might strike a chord with a lot of people here. Actually, let's do a show of hands. How many of you would describe product management as your ideal position out of the gate after E&TIM? Okay, we got like 65%. 60 to 70%. So the question is, why did you transition from engineering to product management? What are the biggest differences in your job now? And do you think it is important skill for product managers to first be engineers? So let me start by saying no, I don't think it's a needed skill for product managers to be engineers. What is needed is that you need to be curious and you need to go a level deeper than the average human being out there. A lot of I didn't do it. Lot of intelligence that you'll see out there is very specific, and we as humans are becoming more and more specific. So I think PMs where they excel and they add value to any organization is they are jack of all trades. They can do cross-functional work. Why did I transition to product management from engineering? That happened very organically. I found myself doing product management while I was doing project management, and I think it was a very kind of like aha moment, as they say. So I fell in love with it. I wanted to pursue it, and during E&TIM, my time at CMU, that was my focus. What are the biggest differences in my job now? I think I work with a startup, so the uncertainty percentage is high as compared to other jobs.
All right. I'll touch on a product management question later. The first one I'm going to touch on is, did your prior work experience assist with your transition into the E&TIM program? And I would say that it did. I know a lot of you and a lot of us came from a variety of backgrounds. We had various people that had experience before, some that did not. And for me, coming into E&TIM with prior experience gave me a different appreciation, I think, for the education that I was getting, where it wasn't just a continuation of undergrad, not to knock that at all. I mean, I think it's a great step, but I was leaving a job that was a pretty good engineering job, and not really sure what that would look like afterwards. And so I had an appreciation for my time here, and wanted to make sure I used my time effectively. And I think too, just to piggyback on that, it made me realize that just the real world applicability of the things that you learn. And I would say especially for the capstone projects. So I don't know if all of you know, but I'm actually helping to do one of the capstone projects for one of the teams now. And I would say, like for us, it's a real world problem that we have a lot of people very interested in. No pressure. But it's something, I don't know what all the capstone projects are, but I know that if it's a company or a startup or anybody that's coming to you with a problem, it's a problem that they're trying to solve, and I think you have the chance to have a real impact. I know like I said, we're very interested to see what the team comes up with. So what you do here has an impact on what you'll do in the future, and even you can have an impact on companies that you're working with even now.
Yes. I have a question for Travis.
All right.
Was it worth it? Like you had a stable job, then you came to E&TIM, and now you're doing something. So was it worth it?
Yes. Yes, it was.
It's recorded.
Important point to note.
Right?
Yeah, for anybody. What do you remember anything you learned in E&TIM that didn't make a lot of sense then but makes sense now?
Do you have something in mind?
No.
I think I have. Could you repeat the question? I think I have a pretty good answer actually.
Was there anything in E&TIM you learned back then it didn't make a lot of sense but now it makes sense?
Yeah, I actually have one very specific answer. And frameworks for strategy cases we did in Jimmy's class in spring. I think when we first came in, I think a lot of us in the first case we did, we got pretty bad grades.
because we didn't use any of the frameworks we learned in the class. We just kind of freestyled it, gave our best, opinion. And over the course, we kind of learned that we had to adopt and use these frameworks, both to get a good grade, but also to kind of, show that we know how they worked and apply them basically. That didn't initially make too much sense, to me, how they're so important to add in. But now working in consulting, I can tell you that all of my work is driven by frameworks. If we're not able to take something we observe of a certain company or in a certain situation and benchmark it or align it against something we have observed in other companies or in other cases, we can't really provide a sound advice. Like we have no substantiating evidence to either say that this is neutral, positive, or negative. So that's been critical after the fact.
So do you refer back to your strategy notes often, like your actual notes that you use, or do you just like go online to find these?
It's a good question. So the notes themselves from the classes, not like individual notes, but the frameworks and like different cases we looked at. And I have actually read some of the reports that we did, just but I would say like not actively, I don't refer to them actively for certain client situations, but in terms of looking at how like different frameworks works and seeing how we apply them and see how I can possibly apply them for a specific client. Like a lot of the frameworks I use are fairly similar to what we use in the strategy class. So if you understand how they work, then maybe PwC or strategy has a separate framework, but it's going to be relatively similar. So, it shows like really how we applied it, so I can say, okay, now I know I can apply it here, or something that's it.
I actually looked at my strategy notes pretty recently when interviewing for A.T. Kearney. So we have one of the guys has a repository of all the notes that we all sent to him. So yes, I have looked at them fairly recently in helping me prepare for my interview. And I also sent my R&D final project to one of the E&TIM alums of my year when she was applying to Nike, because mine was on Nike. So the things are recyclable and definitely used again.
Andy, what was it about Northrop Grumman's culture that allowed you to kind of learn the new skills that you did?
That's very interesting because when I was first talking with Northrop Grumman, I was like, well, why would you be interested in me? I'm a civil engineer. What do you do that is, civil engineering? I knew that I didn't really want to go into civil or environmental engineering at that point, but Northrop Grumman right now is really pushing having people in very non-traditional backgrounds, because having people in non-traditional backgrounds brings a lot of different ideas to the table, and everyone there is willing to teach you what you need to know to do your job. So every day, I have no idea what I'm doing. I honestly, I don't. But I learn. I ask questions. I have great mentors who are really, really technically smart and good people. So I'm given that opportunity to really grow and do what I need to do and do what I want to do.
Okay, yeah, so I guess it was my turn on the question. Right? So I actually want to try and combine two questions because I think both apply. So one question was whether the management knowledge that I acquired from E&TIM has been sufficient, or if I'm still considering like an MBA to make it long-term in consulting. I think it's an interesting question I wanted to address. And on top of that, there was another question, which was whether applied machine learning is a critical skill set for getting into top consulting firms. So, to answer both, first of all, in terms of management skills learned from E&TIM, I would say yes, they have been largely sufficient and also actually in some cases been differentiating towards what traditional management knowledge I've seen with my fellow associates coming in. So I would say the management courses I took here was more than well, both for me to be prepared for the interview that I had to do to get in, and also to excel alongside traditional business students who also may have more experience. So I would say I'd not at all consider an MBA after E&TIM. I do not think that's worth it, personally.
And secondly, more on the interesting side, is it then worth it to take more technical courses if you want to go into like something traditionally management driven, like management consulting or strategy consulting? And there I would say yes. I would say that if you have the opportunity to take courses in what is now a larger tech trend, if it's machine learning, IoT, any type of technology that is now growing, it is largely differentiating to have something like that come into a large consulting firm or even strategy consulting because it gives you ability to have real conversations with the client about something that you know about more than just having read up on it last minute. Like you have actually substantiating knowledge in that field, and it can really differentiate you long term in your career because you will become more and more. You can grow yourself into someone who's an expert or an SME in a particular subject. So I would definitely take advantage of that and not recommend an MBA after it.
Yes.
Many employers aren't really aware of what E&TIM exactly is, or they aren't aware of what what the program entails. Like, how do you overcome that barrier, especially when you're actively seeking jobs?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So yeah, E&TIM. I think when I was originally applying to consulting, I think the recruiters, the general recruiters looking across many schools may not know about individual programs. If it's E&TIM or it's a similar program at another school, they may or may not have specific knowledge on that program. So in a larger sense, I think it's more up to us to showcase E&TIM and to teach them and coach them about E&TIM, what it is, and what impact it has on your career and how it differentiates you. And over time, I think that it will become more of a brand as more and more successful students join PwC, join other consulting companies and other companies with large recruiting channels. They will gain more and more familiarity about the program and recognize it, alongside traditional MBA programs or other, what they traditionally consider.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that. Whenever people ask me, what did your master's program mean, I say it's kind of like an MBA for engineers. But engineers, we're taught to solve problems. But with E&TIM, we can take the solutions to those problems and grow them, and create value from those solutions, which is so different from other programs. So that's what I use.
Touch on two things. One that Fritjof's and one that Maddie said. So to Fritjof's point, every time you talk to a recruiter now, it kind of is on you to make sure that E&TIM and what it is explained pretty well, because it only benefits you, your fellow classmates, and then the program moving forward, right? So when someone asked me about E&TIM, I think someone told me the best way to describe it was, when you look at an MBA, you're the CEO and you look from a top-down approach, but when you look at E&TIM, you're the head of R&D at a company and you're looking more horizontal as opposed to vertical. So you're really driving the change and what the future of the organization is doing and where you're going. And that's the explanation that I've been giving to recruiters, and it sticks. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm glad, Jonathan, you mentioned that. So one way specifically how you can achieve that is specifically driving question towards what's E&TIM. So for example, if you're talking to a company and you see that they're not really asking you about this, or maybe when you're specifically talking to recruiters. So when you talk to hiring managers, let's say in product or in technology, they have a very different set of questions as to understand how you work or how you don't work, right? But recruiters have a very different way of qualifying candidates. So what you can do is, at least what I can tell you, one thing that I did is I had a one-liner, right in my education section, which told you enough that E&TIM is an interdisciplinary program, but nothing more. So they would actually ask me questions. So I was able to drive specific question towards that part, and they were like, okay, what is this program? You mentioned this, but I don't really understand. And in my head, I'm like, okay, it's by design and it's working. So, and then you can take that opportunity to build what the program is about.
Yes.
Will you share that line with us?
Sure. I think it was basically an interdisciplinary program between Heinz and College of Engineering in Tepper. But I think I'm a product person at heart, so I did A/B test a lot of those lines, I have to say. So probably I have like 27 versions of that line, resume, final one, two, so all that, yeah. And you should also, I would encourage everybody to A/B test everything. Trust me.
Okay, so one question I got was, what made me switch from actually, sorry, wrong one. What were some challenges transitioning from aerospace quality to strategy consulting? And what did you do to change your career path? So just to start on the first portion, quality engineering was something that I kind of fell into. Like, I knew that I wanted to switch from the civil engineering background, and that's what E&TIM allowed me to do. It allowed me to show that I was more diverse and I had a wider range of tools in my toolbox, as people like to say, to offer to a company. So quality engineering, I started off doing microelectronics. And I knew I was in a similar situation as Maddie, where I knew nothing about microelectronics. And moving forward, a year and a half went by. I was in the lab all the time, talking with a lot of the inspectors, and got a really, really firm grasp of what that was. And so one benefit that E&TIM had was it allowed me to be promoted much faster than normal. So normally it takes 8 years, and this was a year and a half, but it was purely because there was a gap that needed to be filled, and I had a master's from CMU. So it was, okay, here you go. From there, I was really excited, like, okay, things are going well, I'm gonna crush this, and it was really, really slow. I went from being on the floor, touching the product, to overseeing 3 products or 3 different types of products, and not doing any engineering work. I was signing off, I was approving overtime, I was sitting in meetings, I was on phone calls, and that's what switched the change. So to answer the question, one of the main challenges was the pace of work. I went from leaving work every day at 5, I would get in at 7, leave at 5, had an hour lunch, every other Friday off. It was incredible. And it's something that I definitely, I miss a little bit. But the biggest challenge has been really the style and pace of work. So things that would take me a week are now needed in half a day. If somebody calls me on Friday as I'm leaving to go to a happy hour or a networking event, that takes priority because the client comes first. Really, really, those are the biggest things. And what did I do to change my career path? I updated my LinkedIn. It's so simple. I think I am batty about this a few times because we were on the same network, but she was like, how are things going? Yeah, could be better. And I started looking for a change, so I updated my LinkedIn, and A.T. Kearney actually reached out to me. So it wasn't a lot that I had to do in terms of fielding the opportunity, but what I had to do once I actually got the inquiry about the interview was a whole different story. And that goes back to looking at the E&TIM notes and reading case books and things like that, and also networking with people that are already consultants.
Questions? You guys can ask questions in between. Right?
I'm going to interview this week. Give me some advice. I'm going to interview this week. Give me some advice.
I would say speak more clearly. So I'm kind of kidding. But so one of the things when you're interviewing, and I learned this 2 weeks ago, and I said this kind of tongue in cheek, but every time you speak, you're branding yourself, and I wasn't one that really believed in the whole "you are a brand." But now that I'm a consultant, it really does differentiate you from other people, because what you know is very specialized, but you have to assume that everyone in this room, for the most part, knows what you know from an E&TIM standpoint. So when you go into a room, your fellow consultants will know the same thing, or when you're interviewing, you are special because you go to CMU and you're about to have this master's degree, but at the same time, most likely everyone interviewing will have something special about them as well. So the way you brand yourself, the way you carry yourself, what you say, how you say it, is extremely important.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Can I specifically from the product manager?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You want to say it specifically for a product?
Sure.
management?
This is
We're going to take you.
Yeah, so, what was the question?
How about interview
He's gonna
this week?
He wants advice.
He wants advice on his interview.
Oh, you have an
The
interview?
The role might be curved. I'm not sure. Yeah,
This is turned on.
it's a ghost.
So you have an interview coming up?
Yeah.
Soon?
It probably, I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's probably along the lines of product manager or something.
Okay. What is it? Like, it's a video interview, or are you going to be going there in person? What stage is this? Is it first time you're talking to them? Okay. So you want advice on that? Okay,
Yeah.
sure. So, questions, clarifying questions. Is this a software company?
No, hardware company.
Hardware company?
Yeah.
Do you, can you think of a problem, or do you already see a problem in their product that you think you might have a solution for, or idea?
Thanks.
Yeah, so you might not like this answer because this might entail like few hours of work, but what I would really recommend is just look at the product, what they're doing right now, and if you really want that product manager job, right? So you tell them, hey, you're doing this thing this way, and it's getting you this result. And I've thought about that you might want to do this way, and I'm not saying this is a bulletproof, like 100% right answer, but I think this could give you this result. And what kind of metrics you're tracking, be specific about it. And if you bring that to the interview or even send them beforehand, I think you'll have a very good competitive advantage compared to many other candidates who won't do that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have a product management interview, then
I don't know what the rule is right now, but that's probably one.
Not sure.
okay.
He's not sure what he's
Okay. Now, because I was just going to add on to consulting interviews, because actually right now I've been working in recruitment for the past 2 months.
Okay.
With strategy and we're hiring for our practice. We're trying to actually hire a lot of people for practice, so we're looking at a lot of candidates, so that's why we're involving everyone in the process. And it's been a pretty learning experience once you sit on the other side of the table, because you start kind of seeing how some good performers really like stand out from the herd basically. And what really characterizes is that they're very, very prepared. Like they're extremely prepared. They're prepared to the sense that they can go 3 levels of questions down in any direction. And they know a lot about what we're doing before they even come in the room basically. So that is one, like being super prepared. But it's also the idea that the way we interview candidates is that we always put ourselves in the shoes of the client, which we interface all the time, and we think about this as a potential consultant coming in, talking to us as a client basically. And you can always see if someone just naturally or just consciously understand that this is an environment where, like Jonathan said, everything you do is observed, everything you say will be, you know, will be evaluated basically, and that you're conscious about how you are there to connect and build a trusted relationship with someone. Yeah, I don't underestimate, you know, preparing both on the case side and all of these things, but also just on how you're going to interact with everyone you meet. And literally everyone, like everyone you meet is going to give their feedback on your performance from the moment you step in the door through the time you leave the door, basically. So, you know, be prepared and smile and be engaged and try to, you know, connect with everyone you meet. That's my advice.
I'll throw a comment to the question. So I think all of you are obviously here at CMU. You've got a technical undergrad, you're at a prestigious school, and that's awesome. Congratulations to all of you. But as they've said, it's really on you to sell yourself. There's a lot of people that are at prestigious schools with good degrees, and I think it goes back to the lady's question over here earlier. What is E&TIM? You need to be able to sell E&TIM because people aren't as familiar with it. Yeah, so you're already representing the program, and I know I touched on capstone projects before, but you're already representing the program as you go into these companies and as other companies are here, other people from those companies are listening to the capstone projects. Like once you work on sometimes hypothetical case studies and things here that really prepare you and help you, but when you're interviewing for a position, it's a real world need. I know we as a company, we're often looking at headcount and where can we make things work, and we really have to, I'm sure it's this way for a lot of these people, like you really have to fight to get someone into a role. And so when there's a role that's open, they're not just looking to give you a job because they like you, but they need someone that can fill a position, that can solve a problem. And so you have to be able to want that and show why you can solve the problem that they need.
I have a question for the consulting side. How much of it is like personality versus, skill versus experience? You think when like selling yourself and trying to get these roles?
It's, I don't know for sure this is actually on, but it's, so what was the three you said? You said personality?
Personality, skill, or
Skills.
experience.
And experience. So I think at the base level, what gets you in the door, into the room, is definitely your skill set and your experience. Once you're in the room, a lot more than you think is actually around the personality. So like around how you express yourself, and how you basically, like Johnson said, like how you explain things and how you basically interact with the interviewer. I think it's actually a lot more, not subjective, but it's a lot more individual to the interviewer, especially in consulting, whether they feel that this is someone they would have on their team. Like at VAR, we ask ourselves, when we ask about candidates, it's like, is this someone you would put on your next project? Is this someone you would work with for 5 years? And like day and night, basically. So it comes really down to, it's like, would you personally have this person on your team, work together, go through, tough exercises? So personality, but not from like, from a general perspective, like how you interact basically and how you connect with someone. And one thing I wanted to add, because I forgot earlier, was, these people are interviewing, especially consulting. We do about, I think, 15 interviews per day. So the partners or the directors who you're going to be interfacing with, they're doing a lot of these. And I think what one guy told me, and I've kind of experienced myself, is just if you're able to kind of create a more relaxed setting, like it's a pretty tense setting to begin with, like you're coming in, everyone's in suits, and if you're able to kind of create a little more relaxed setting, show that you're relaxed, you're comfortable in this environment, that's going to have a huge impact because that's going to make the other person comfortable as well.
And that's the same on the day-to-day too. So when you're interfacing with the client, you want to be relaxed, you want to be comfortable. And an informal mentor at the company that I just got, she told me that half the job is confidence. So I mean, to be completely fair, I know nothing about optimizing a network, and I'm definitely not qualified to tell a large car manufacturer where they should send their cars and how they're going to save X number of dollars. But I'm getting paid to do that. So a lot of it literally is confidence, and then also being able to put in the hard work to go learn after someone asks you a question and you say, oh, well, here's my hypothesis, and then you go vet the hypothesis and turn around really quickly. So yeah, confidence definitely, and then skill set, you have it. Whether or not you know it, that's a different story, but you have it.
So I think I've touched on a lot of these questions here. There's one that's a little bit more specific. What inspired you to explore RF engineering and apply to your current position? And how did you manage that transition? So when I started out at Northrop Grumman, I was in systems engineering and then field engineering. So it was much more of a high level, a bigger picture of what we do. And I didn't want to go into hardware engineering at all. I had no desire, I wanted to stay big picture, high level. But a mentor of mine talked to me about it, and she said, this is a really good opportunity for you to learn how radars work and really be able to take that and apply it to the big picture later on. So that sold me. I decided to go into RF engineering and learn really how these things work and how we're doing what we do and making huge progress in a lot of the technical innovation of radars. So that was that. And how did you manage the transition? I was very, very nervous when I first started in RF engineering, but I was with some other people who had just started at Northrop Grumman, so I kind of had the experience of, I had been with Northrop Grumman for a year at that point, so I had that experience to impart on them, and they had a little bit more of the technical background than I did, so they were able to help me through a lot of the technical challenges that I faced. So really finding people, your peers or mentors who are above you technically or in the company was really, really helpful. I was very fortunate to be a part of a company who really doesn't care. They don't care what your background is. They want good engineers. They want good, talented people who are willing to do the work. So just having that mindset and going after it really helped.
Questions? Okay.
So there are a bunch of questions here, and to respect time, so let's see what people are interested in. There's a question about startups. Are people interested in startups here? Do we actually want to hear about that? Show of hands. Sorry, I didn't say that. I should have been more clear. Okay, so we'll do this. The question is, for those who are interested in working at a startup / creating their own startup company, which one of the two would you advise and why? Number one, start working for startup directly after graduation, or number two, work at a big company first and then go for a startup? This is a very good question. I do have to say, I used to think about it a lot, but I think being a product person helps you look through, the world through a very different lens. And I think I would recommend that you take charge, basically, write down what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. Not what you say in the interview, but what really your strengths are. So if you find yourself, you're already a highly organized person, you can, create and maintain processes, then I think you already have some kind of skill set that you're going to learn from a big organization. But at the same time, if you're somebody who is, let's say, very comfortable in uncertain situations, can manage, life at a very minimal level of data, can take decisions, then you might not need it. So depending on what you're missing, I would say you go and get that. If you do think that you are a very creative person, but you lack discipline, I would highly recommend work with a big org. You'll be working 9 to 9 if you're lucky, and you'll get to know the discipline part. Creativity, I think, there's this saying, creativity sleeps and hard work wins. I'm not getting it. I don't remember exactly the words right now, but on the other hand, if you find that you're fine with the processes, or you worked in the past with big companies, and all you need to do is now you need to increase the rate of decisions that you make per minute, per hour, per second, then you need to go with a startup. Are you fine with uncertainty? Do you want to be able to apply your skill set to a wide variety of problems rather than a very specific niche that you're given? So based on that, I think you should be able to answer this very clearly, whether you should go for a startup or a big org first. Hope that answered.
All right. When's the class over?
You're good.
We're good?
7:20.
Okay. I'm going to touch on two, just because I feel like touching on two. So the first, they're kind of unrelated, but they're a bit related. The first is, what are the most important skills that a product manager must possess to thrive in the industry? And then the second is, what's the most difficult part when you develop a new product? So to answer the first, so we have, in our division, we have 3 product line managers. So there was another question of what's the difference between a product line manager and a product manager. I guess maybe I'm answering too many questions. For us, a product line it's kind of a variety of different products that go into a specific industry rather than focusing on this exact product and developing all of that. So I cover a wide variety of products that we sell. And for us, and I'm sure it's different if you're in a startup or in consulting, but for us, for a product manager, product line manager in my case, you end up dealing with a variety of different problems and a lot of things that are kind of unexpected. So in some ways, I feel like I was sort of thrown into my role, and I feel like I'm still playing catch up sometimes. And you have to be able to learn and kind of drive solutions. So when you get out into your job, no one's going to hand you a syllabus and say, here are the things that you have to accomplish by this date, and here's the meetings that you need to go to, here's the specific project team that you need to work with. That if you want to be a leader in an organization, you really have to drive a lot of that yourself and figure out what the problems are, figure out who you need to talk to, pull the right people in, and drive that yourself. And I would also say just being organized. I don't consider myself a super organized person, and I'm finding how that is problematic sometimes, just in anything from emails to saving documents to all of that. If you can get yourself organized, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the team up here, but I probably get at least like 100 emails a day of like important things that need to be addressed that are sitting on my phone waiting for me to get to. So being organized and being able to really manage your time, manage the resources that you create, whether it's documents and things like that, and really being able to interact and work with people. If you want to be a manager, you need to be able to interact with all sorts of different people, whether it's customers to shop floor people. So I work in a manufacturing environment, so I've interacted anywhere from the CEO down to the new technician who's hired. I'm on probably at least weekly calls with my customer. So you really have to learn to manage that and manage kind of the flow of information. So maybe I'll get back to the other question later. I'll let someone else go.
With all the emails and jumping on the projects, does it ever get really stressful? And at those times, how do you deal with that stress?
Delete.
That's how it always works.
It's like, that's why I haven't heard from Jimmy.
Absolutely, it gets stressful. I mean, I feel like I've gone through times where I'm like, okay, if I can just get through this, it'll be better. And then when I get through that, something else hits. And I don't know if that's the nature of my job. I'm sure everyone can share stories about that. But it's finding a balance sometimes. I know our company talks about work-life balance, which is a difficult balance to find. But sometimes you need to be able to turn it off and go do something else. I think as crazy as it sounds, just taking care of yourself, like taking care of your body, what you eat, working out, things like that can really help with managing stress. But I think especially getting into a role out of this program, you're not going to get into some big cushy job and that is just easy and you're getting paid six figures to just sit there and send a few emails. I mean, if you want to do well, you have to work hard and you have to put in the time, and it's going to be stressful. And And I guess I'll answer the previous question, or a question a while ago, the one word, I'd say diligence. You really just have to stick with it. And you kind of have to push through, you have to look for outside of the box solutions, because it's not going to be, I think frameworks are very important as have been touched on, but they're not going to tell you, okay, we just learned this in class, here's a case study to do it. You're presented with a problem and you have to figure something out. And it can be a good challenge, but it can certainly be a stressful challenge for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, if I just add on to the, actually I don't think if this works, I don't know if that's, so first on the email, I just want to touch on that because especially like in consulting, I know so I get like 250 emails per day. Like it really, like, I'm sitting here, it's just vibrating constantly. And, you know, the funny thing about it is that you kind of just have to find a way to come to peace with it. And the way that, so they call this the email ghost, right? And the email ghost is that at some point you become afraid to look at your phone or your email because you know it's going to be 100 emails and you haven't answered. And that's like a pretty bad spiral. But the idea is to find a system that works for you. And one thing that really works for me is to immediately either respond and just say, this is kind of my short response, or just say, I'll get back to you later. That just gets you out of your court. It's not in your court anymore. And that way you know if it's really important, they'll get back to you. And you get like an extra filter somehow. And yeah, the key with that is that, you know, you find a way to kind of come to peace with it. So yeah, and I don't know, should I jump to the next question?
I have something to add to the stress,
yeah.
stress thing. It's really helped me to find someone at work who actually cares about me professionally, but also outside of work. So I had a manager back when I first started, and we still talk all the time. And I was talking to him about, upcoming, career moves and different things. And he said, you know what, Maddie, you need to care about things outside of these walls, not just work. And that is so important to find someone who actually cares enough to say that, So I found that helps with stress.
Liz, you had a question?
Actually, never mind.
Other questions? Any other questions on you guys' list that you want to?
Yeah, I have one more actually on my list that I want to we address. So, because I think this is kind of important, and at least for me, there was one question that was, what are let me see if I find it. It was basically, what's like the key challenges in, at least that I've seen as part of technology strategy consulting and private equity consulting. And it's actually been like a pattern in both settings where at any company or client that you're faced with, there's going to be people who are very technical, who understand the product or the solution that you're building. And there's going to be people who sit on basically the financial decisions. And more than you think, at least in an organization, even large tech companies, the people that are making the large decisions and the people who sit on the critical knowledge are not too good at talking to each other. So that is like the engineers, the developers, and then you have basically the executive leadership or even the owners, right? So in my case, private equity companies, so trying to invest or build or drive a company to scale 10x or 25, and having the ability to speak both languages, to understand the technology, and be able to express that in a context that the owners and private equity can understand. So you mentioned EBITDA and understanding finance, but also technology. I think that's a critical skill that you can get from E&TIM and from the classes that you can take here as part of this program. That I think in a lot of contexts is going to be really valuable.
Any other pressing questions? You guys?
Yeah, so this wasn't, it's not a question on here that I'm immediately directing or answering, but essentially one of the things that they're asking is, what did you get out of E&TIM? And it's not the conventional answer, but for me, I think my biggest takeaway from E&TIM was interacting with people from different cultures and different nationalities. So I came in, and I think me and Maddie were the only two Americans.
I think so, yeah.
So even SCMU is fairly diverse, but you stay within your bucket. And having that exposure to other cultures has opened my eyes, one, to what I have to offer as a black male from America to the rest of the world, and what my value proposition is at A.T. Kearney. But furthermore, it's kind of broadened my sense of, I don't want to say like being, but I came in and now I have 3 very, very good friends from different countries, right? From Middle East, I got to see Norway and France with this guy. So don't take that for granted, because in the real world, you're not just going to be working with people of your nationalities. And if you are, at some point you'll have to expand depending on what your career goals and objectives are. So this is one of those rare opportunities where you're around each other, that people are very, very different, but you're close-knit, that you can learn from each other. And my biggest takeaway from that was, wow, I now care about things outside of this little bubble and sphere that I thought were really, really important.
Other big takeaways?
I'll let you guys go first if you want.
I'm not ready yet.
I think just a closing remark would be, you still have, I think we're in, I mean, it's almost kind of like done for single degree people, but I hope you made the best of the E&TIM experience. One thing you can still do is make sure that you not only stick to the courses that you take. There's this thing I actually learned, I think in my case too late, that you could actually just go and learn anywhere, and once you start showing interest, you would actually see that mostly everybody would be ready to help you. Be it professors, be it other people who are taking a different class that you're not registered to, but you do have to show like a very honest sense of like, hey, I do want to learn this, and people would be willing to help you. Now that being said, I know that's easier said than done. You barely have any time. So I highly recommend also managing your time very well now that you're doing the job search. So make sure that you're working on things that are going to yield results rather than getting stuck in a rat race because you heard 10 people are doing something, so you also start doing that, and then it does not yield result for all the 11 of you. So I would actually encourage you to manage your time very wisely for the remainder of the year.
Other comments? Question?
Just
Yes.
one last
Hey,
question.
no.
How do you define innovation?
I'm going to stick with the answer that I gave in this class, the initial class that we had, to define it. Creating value. That's simple and sweet.
So we had a professor, Zaidi. Remember Zaidi?
Yeah.
He said sustainable, new. There were 2. Cost effective, and there was one more. But he had these 4 things that perfectly encompassed what it was, and 75% of it stuck with me.
The last one has to be capturing that.
That's essentially right.
All right, other questions? All right, for all the, yes.
Just one question for, consulting on like anyone. How much, so say from a recruiting perspective, maybe if you have been a part of that process, how much do you value something like online courses? If you see a resume that has, things learned from Coursera or Udemy, or do you really value that, or are you, it's not given that much importance? How does that work?
I'm happy to answer. The cool thing is that there's a lot of things that's going to be important to get you into that room to have that interview. But I really feel like once you're in that room, like all bets are off. Like there's nothing, everything that's outside. Like I will probably know your background, I know kind of what you're doing, but it's really up to you to sell yourself and take the things that you believe makes you into a capable and strong asset. And if that is part of your story,
I will listen, and I think that goes for any recruit.
Yeah, so to touch on that, they do matter. So I just did a vetting of 40 resumes, and just something to touch on, if you put it on there, be ready to talk to it. Because you could come into the room and somebody knows really, really well about machine learning, and they can ask you questions, and it doesn't suffice to say, oh, my online course didn't cover that.
I should never say that.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but yeah, same thing. I think it depends what kind of company you're looking for. I was a little surprised, and I don't know if anybody else would speak to this too, but I think coming into E&TIM with previous work experience, I'm graduating from Carnegie Mellon, I was like, this will be easy to find a job, and then you're like, oh wow, I still haven't found a job, and it's December. So, I mean, not to scare you, I mean, we all found a job. I think pretty much everyone from our class found a job. Like, it'll be okay, but it depends on what company. Some companies, I mean, they're getting hundreds of resumes, and so making yourself stand out there is in whatever way you can. But then, really, if you can get in your foot in the door, as Fridtjof said, selling yourself and really. Finding, I know our company looks for like having practical examples of ways that you've taken on leadership, or ways that you've solved problems, or ways that you've worked through people issues. If you can have practical examples to back up what you say, rather than just, this is what I learned, that can be really helpful.
So good. One of the things that I like to do when we have our alums here is just to sit in the chair and let them tell the story. And so for their storytelling and I think great advice for you guys, we'll give them a round of applause. So the other thing we'll do is we'll assemble it. We'll move to the E&TIM space. I think all of them plan to be there. So the ones of you who were afraid to ask the questions in class, you'll get to ask them one-on-one. So we'll see you all in the E&TIM space. Thanks.